Hi, I'm Marc and welcome back to the second season of Get to the Joke. Our guest today is Paul Hooper, who is one of my favorite comics that I get to watch and work with. Paul has been seen on Gotham Comedy Live and has a really outstanding album called Tense and Uncomfortable that you must check out. I hope you enjoy this interview with Paul as we take a really good look about his upbringing and how that transformed him into the incredible comic that he is today. So please enjoy, subscribe to this channel for more interviews like this, and now let's get to the joke.
I don't know. I will say my sex drive's alive and well. That's a thing. It's alive and well. And I don't really have a fetish. If I had a cop to having a fetish, I'm a tad bit of an exhibitionist. With a shame, because you can't act on it. I can't go with my girlfriend to a nice secluded park around 2 a.m., have sex. This is a breeze blows across our genitals or whatever. And someone stumbles across us, we go to jail. Meanwhile, far more sinister fetishes are perfectly legal, like the S&M thing that's just way too popular. People in this room do it, I know you do, and then my friends do it, that choking. You go behind closed doors and choke each other. Just so much worse than exhibitionism. You go in your boudoir and you just go strangle, just commit consensual felonies behind closed doors. How's this possible? I can't go on a beach at midnight with my lovely girlfriend as the waves lap upon my buttocks. And my buddy can go behind a closed door and just hit a woman with a fucking boat oar, and everything's fine. Just fucking wahoo chop her in the larynx, everything's good. Just fucking mule kick her into the sheetrock, everything's good. My right nut comes out, I'm doing 2 years. Someone explain these laws to me.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, man.
Hey, it's so good to see you. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Dude, it's so good to see you, man. It's been a long time.
Good to see you, man. Yeah, it's been a bit.
Dude.
Year and a half?
Yeah, at the shortest amount of time. Yeah, I don't know, it's probably been longer than that, I feel like. I can't remember.
Yeah, but I think it was a gig in Pennsylvania, maybe summer of 2019.
Yeah, I think it was you came to Blue Mountain was the last time in that really, like, that New Tripoli, that really small town.
Yeah, it was fun, man.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. This is quite the honor to get you. Dude, you're such a great, you're one of those like, I'll never forget the first time I met you, which is at that, gosh, it was like the bottom of a bar somewhere in Brooklyn, Queens, I forget.
Manhattan, Drexler's.
Drexler's, yes. And me and Buddy Harris had just done, and we did okay. We're like, oh my gosh, we could do this. We could we could be like New York comics. And then like you showed up, and like we didn't know who you were, but then you just destroyed. We're like, oh, we're not ready at all. Like, look at the caliber of individuals that are just dropping in here to do it. So. But
I don't know about that. I remember it being fun in the basement. Met you guys. You guys had all like had a car full of comics.
Yeah,
in Pennsylvania.
We had. I wanted to start out actually a little bit differently. It was this. I had screenshotted this post of yours from October last year, and you probably know which one I'm talking about. I'll paraphrase it real super quick, but it's comedy is not back. Just because a few clubs reopened across the country does not mean you can make anything close to a living at it. The truth about comedy is this: if you're famous, you're fine. If your spouse is a breadwinner, you're fine. If you content of keeping your day job and do comedy on the side, you'll be fine. But if anything else, you are super fucked. I thought that's like the realest post of any comic that's written anything during coronavirus. I know it's not a joke, but it's like a real like cool like behind that, like the pulling the curtains kind of thing of like kind of the true kind of road comics like yourself, and like not every comic is Bill Burr and Jim Gaffigan. That's probably about the top 5%. About the other like 50% are people like yourself headlining road gigs. So how tough has it been for you right now with this year off? I mean, this is the only thing you have, like this is the only thing you're skilled at. So how tough has this past year been for you?
Yeah, man, it's been excruciating. Well, it's like financially, it's just a bloodbath. So,
Do you qualify for unemployment, or have you been taking up side hustles? Or
I got unemployment, but it's so low, so it's helped. But it's definitely not, of course, it's not meant to match what you were making before. But it was just sort of like my last road gig was of 2020 was March 5th through 7th in Atlanta. It's strange, and I just went back and did that same club. That was my first gig back the end of February. It was almost 51 weeks exactly.
Yeah, wow.
2 weeks off. So all that time off, and then I wrote that post when I was in like 20 seconds. I was just frustrated, sitting in bed. I was stressed about money, and then I would sort of see these things too. It's sort of like comedy. It's all over the place. You figure like there's so many comics that have day jobs. There's comics that are there's comics that you don't know, and there's that mysterious side of it where I was like, am I the only one freaking out about money?
Yeah.
And I'm like, or is everybody married to an anesthesiologist? Did I not do that? No one seems to be. There are people, they might not as vocal as me about it. I was just like, man, this is going on and on and on, and I'm just losing money. And so. I mean,
so like what, so I know like you've moved out of New York. Are you moving, did you move back in with your mom? Is that where you're currently at?
No, anyway, my sister's place in North Carolina.
Okay. And so I remember hearing on a few of your podcasts how like prior to the pandemic, these were all being filmed, and you said that you were home for a month straight and it killed you to be home in your apartment in New York for a month. And now you've been doing that for a year. So forget the financial toll. What if, like, as far as your mental health toll, what are we looking at here with you?
I was a little burnt out with comedy going into the pandemic. And I've heard other comics say that. Like the initial, like, break was good. I've heard people say that. And I was okay taking a few months off from comedy, honestly. Yeah. And then as it went on, it started getting me. I'm okay being alone a lot of times, or being secluded. I'm not the most social person, so I don't. And so I would basically do shows, hang out with a handful of friends, and that was my social life. So I didn't miss a ton. I don't care for gatherings too much. And so I was able to just sort of hunker down and ride it out. But it was the whole thing of the financial side and the career side of what I want to do. I'm going to have to leave New York. There was the stuff that was, sitting alone in your room, even though I'm okay being alone normally, with those thoughts that would start to eat. Yeah. I'm not lonely here. Yeah. But it's all the stuff that's gone wrong this year that started.
Well, it's so unknown. It's such a variable because even when things open back up, there's talks about like what's that going to look like, or how club how showrunners are. Like if they can only seat 50% of the people, you're only going to get 50% of what you got paid in the past. They're not going to keep at it kind of thing. Maybe some will, but also the fact that like they're predicting like a bottleneck where these top comics like Gaffigan and Seinfeld will start doing kind of like the clubs and stuff that you kind of do right now. And so like there'll just kind of be this trickle down effect of like comics doing like smaller rooms that haven't done smaller rooms in for years kind of thing. Are you also concerned about the unknown about when you'll be able to get back to that kind of what you made your best year, in comedy, like when that will happen again?
I'm thinking I'm trying to figure out a new way because I keep thinking, I sat here and as the gigs start to come back now, can pick up a couple things coming up, but I'm sort of like, it's not, I'm not picking up 20, 30 weeks. I'm picking up 4 weeks, which is not going to carry my year. Yeah. Spread over, and people are like, well, it'll slowly, and a few months ago before it was like this, people were like, you should try to come down to Florida. Yeah. This gig I did in Florida, I'm like, I would love to do that gig, but what's it going to do? Like, I'm going to fight to get this gig, do 3 days of shows, and then take 5 more months off. Yeah. I mean, what's that about? Financially, my mental state. Yeah. I mean, I was like, it's now starting to come back a little bit more, and I'm sort of like, but it's not fixed. It's worse than it was before, and it was already sort of fucked. Yeah. Think about 2019, like trying to make a living as a comic that's not famous was shitty in 2019. Took everything you had, and so 2021, 2022 is not going to be any better. I figure I'm going to, like all of us have to come up with something else. Yeah. To sort of augment it. And because I don't think straight stand up on the road 40 weeks a year even if you do 40 weeks, I'll have a draw, or you're not somewhat famous or comedy famous. You can't make enough money at 40 weeks.
I only done.
You live in your car and.
Oh, geez, yeah, that's.
And I don't even think it's possible to get 40 weeks of work, like good work. I mean, I guess you could slap together shows, but real work.
Exactly. Now I've only done 3 shows with you, but on those shows, you're not a guy that sells merch. Are you now thinking like this is something I'm going to have to be doing? I know you're not like the guy that wants to shake people's hands and talk about their kids and all that bullshit. But is that now something that you have to think about applying into your stand-up now? Like, make sure I have a shirt and make sure I incorporate that into a joke and that kind of whole charade that comics do.
I have to incorporate it into a joke, but I'm not. I had a CD for a while. Those stopped selling, of course. And those are like, not a thing. Yeah. And so there's these. You can't really sell an album. Yeah. Hard copy on the road anymore. So I haven't had shirts since like 15 years ago when I started featuring. I had shirts. So I'm not eager, but I've got to figure out a way. Yeah. Without, selling myself out where it was like that I can make some more money doing, but I'm just not. No, I'm not going to cave. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, if it comes like I've seen comics that just sell everything. Yeah. You're just already a salesman, or the last 10 minutes of your show is that. I'm like, if it comes to that point for me, I'd rather just sell something other than comedy. Yeah. I'd rather just get out of the business and sell boats in Florida. Okay. And it gets to a certain point, it's too much. Yeah. I mean, but, I sell things I'm proud of, whether it's like an album or something like that. And maybe a T-shirt that I thought was cool, too. I'm not opposed to that. Yeah. It's just like, I'm not going to go up there and... I don't know, a 5-minute, 10-minute sales pitch, or try to weave it into a joke. Corny nonsense. I know. And also, I'm glad I have less money than those comics. Yeah. And those, Yeah. So maybe I'm an idiot. No, man, dude. What my observation of you is when I see you perform, I'm like, Paul is the smartest person in the room right now. And it's just, it's like, I don't know if everyone realizes that, but your observations and how fast you are and this vivid imagery that you paint, we'll get into that. Some of the imagery that you kind of paint, the kind of things that, in the clip that you sent me around like your exhibitionist, and you're using like words like, like mule kick into sheetrock. Like it's like these phrases that I've never heard of other comics. You kind of go that other intellectual level. And I will ask you about that later because you're one of the few guys that do it. But I can see why you would not want to kind of, pimp yourself out at the end of shows, because you are this, you're this very intellectual comic. And I can see like that, you know that your jokes are very self-deprecating and you always kind of paint yourself into, like, hey, you're kind of like the guy that's the butt of the jokes. I can tell that that, and even you said, like, I'm not going to change my joke style for the audience. Like, you're almost like kind of like up here, and they have to come up to you because it's not worth your time to come down to their level, so. I'm stubborn to a fault,
I know. And, that's a good thing.
It's the hardest road possible to do it. I mean, it's truly like stand-up, and I just realized, like, in this day and age, there's more to it than just straight stand-up to make a living at it and stuff. So I'm trying to figure out what I can do for myself. Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Well, I mean, I like saying things in a different way, like
for sure.
A way that hasn't been said, that's me.
Yeah.
And originality is everything. That in it being funny is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I think sets yourself apart. And that's why I think I'm such a huge fan of yours, because there's very few comics that can do what you do, I feel like. But we'll get to that. I want to go way back in time. Not way back in time, but back in time. So you're raised in the South in a religious family, but I saw an interview that said, like, hey, you got away from that. I think, and the quote I have here is, none of it ever really scared me. Can you kind of describe kind of your, like, growing up, you as a kid, kind of, because, like, when I see, I mean, you don't really talk much about your early life. Not that people have asked you, that's why I'm asking you. But I picture, like, very strict code of conduct that you're held responsible for. And your joke about your father leaving the family and that kind of thing. So can you kind of paint me a picture of, like, kind of how you grew up and then kind of, like, why you kind of had a falling out with religion and that kind of thing? From, like, it sounds like it's from a lot of your childhood experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too extreme. I was raised in North Carolina, so I was raised, I guess, technically Southern Baptist, and it sounds severe when people in other parts of the country, Southern Baptist, sort of a scary thing. But the church I went to, my whole family went there, and I think it was my what would it make me? My grandmother's brother-in-law was the preacher, whatever that is for me. And so, he was pretty intense, but it didn't scare me. And my family, they would let me sort of sketch or draw. I'd stand up, lip sync the hymns. They weren't really on top of it. As long as we kept our mouths shut and were quiet, it was everything. And there was a lot of the sermons were sort of get loud, but it never, I don't know. It wasn't that scary to me. But the reason I say organized religion, what I think played a role in me, questioning everything, was because Charlotte at that time, I'm 45 now, born in 1975. So when I was at PTL Club, remember Jeff Baker?
Oh, yeah.
Televangelist?
Yeah.
He was right around Charlotte. His whole area, this Heritage USA theme park, everything he did. But we would watch it after game shows. I watched as a kid. I watched game shows with my grandmother during summer breaks, and then PTL Club would come on. It was this crazy thing to watch. And so when he, got a hooker or whatever he did, fall from grace and ruined everything. I remember the adults talking about it. It was the show. A hometown story / world news story. It was my payment. It was all this thing. I saw it come crashing down. And then I heard this adult version of why it did, the dark side of it. And all that made me oh, yeah. And then so I had this fascination with televangelists and during that time, during my childhood, Jimmy Swaggart, all that was happening in the 80s and stuff. All these crazy televangelists, they all were just screwing up left and right and getting hookers and getting drugs. And there's a lot for a kid. It's this is religion, but then, what's this other side of it? So it made me think, okay, this is all bullshit or money making scheme,
Yeah. So how is I guess this version of you that's on the stage is probably very equatable to how you are off the stage. You always seem to be questioning things. You always seem to kind of be the one that goes against the grain. You're seeing it from a different angle, not being a conformist. How was the relationship between you and your mom? Especially, so your dad did you ever know your dad, or did he walk out before you even had memories?
No, he left when I was 3 or 4, and then I had visitation with him.
Okay.
I was 12, and then I didn't want to see him anymore.
Okay.
And since then, so it went from basically it's 12 or 13 I stopped seeing him. Saw him again at 19. Saw him again at 32.
Okay.
And then we've reconnected now in the last 5 or 6 years through my sisters, and we're starting to sort of try to rebuild some kind of relationship.
Can I ask why of such big gaps in between? If you're not comfortable talking about it, I understand, but why was it?
I didn't want to see him.
Yeah.
He had all these issues, which is would be an hour in itself to tell, but it was from childhood and the visitation were just. I was very close to my mom.
Yeah. And
they raised me by 2 different sets of rules, and then I don't know. It was just sort of, to describe him as a character was very intense, and I just at some point, as I got 12, 13, whatever it was, probably going into puberty too, and everything going on, I just was I don't want to see him anymore. And
wow,
so almost another court case until they sent to a child psychologist, all this other stuff. And I almost went back to court again until he's finally okay, if you don't want to see me, all right, I respect that. And that's what it was. And I didn't want to see him again. And then just slowly through I saw him a few years later when he was coming through town again, and we had lunch, and then I saw him another 10 or 12 years later. So.
Wow, that's crazy, man. That's such it seems such a mature way of behaving at 12 and 13 years old. I didn't have you recognize this is not a healthy situation for me to be in. I'd rather go through the court system, which isn't good for a 12-year-old. It's kind of who would you say kind of shaped your personality? Is that your mom? Kind of this kind of intellectual vagabond is kind of what I would describe you as kind of person. Is that kind of your mom's influence, or was there kind of more outside influence in your life then at that point? If your dad was out of the picture.
My mom a lot, I'm close with her still to this day, and then, but when my mom had to go back to work after the divorce, she was a single working mother. So my aunt and grandmother lived in the same neighborhood as us, which was nice. So they looked after me.
Okay.
They took me to school, and in the summer months, they took care of me while she was working. So really close to them. So my mom, my aunt, my grandmother pretty much raised me.
Okay.
My grandmother, but my grandmother was like this super cynical, unintentionally funny. I mean, but like 4'11", incredibly morose, doom and gloom. But I loved her. She was awesome. She was awesome. And she was really good to me. You know, grandkids get the great treatment. So I was an only child. My dad left, so she really was above, beyond, and took care of me. But also, she had these really like dark stories she would tell about her childhood, and stories that I don't even know. I've talked age because like they're crazy. I don't know if she made them up. Or she told them. I don't know what was going on, but like it's real dark. My grandmother would like just a lot of death. A lot of stories just ended in death.
Yeah.
Doom and gloom. But I loved her, and I was captivated by the kid. So I think she shaped me in some way. I spent a lot of time with her.
Is it the fact that she kind of treated you like an adult? It seemed like these are very adult conversations. Like it didn't matter if you were 12 years old. She was going to talk to you like you were 45 or whatever. Kind of like she would talk to you.
It seems that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
She treated me like really well. This like my aunt, my grandmother really did.
Wow.
Me like some respect.
Has your dad ever seen you perform live?
Yeah, he came. He's now out in the Midwest, but he came. He was living in Texas for a bit, and then came down to Houston and saw some shows.
What was that like? What was that like for you? Did you know he was there, or did he not tell you that he was there till after?
Yeah, he was like, it was a plan. He was like, I'd like to see you come out to Texas. I'm like, well, I'm in Houston and whenever, and so he's like, okay, I'll come down. He got his own hotel, came up, and then. I think he now was sort of respectful of like my time and not. I'm like, I can't be hanging out all day and then do shows trying to reconnect with my father. 2 shows in front of him. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
But he left me alone during the day. He come to the show, happy and proud. And
nice.
The only thing he did that was sort of funny was like before he came to see the shows, he's like, "Do you have any jokes about me?" And I'm like, "I have this thing about my father left when I was 3.
Yeah.
You guys are going to pay the price for." I have this thing about my father left when I was 3. He interrupted it. He's like, it was 4. Your mother told me. All right. Part of the problem.
That's funny.
Like interrupting, of course. Let's go back. 1979.
So you got obsessed with comedy in 4th grade, and you're watching things like Eddie Murphy's Delirious. Now you like some older comics too, but I'm going to focus on Eddie Murphy Delirious. How did you kind of get introduced to that in 4th grade? I'll be honest. I don't think I even knew who Eddie Murphy was in 4th grade. So like, if your grandmother's like a preacher's wife, and you're kind of like in this pseudo-religious household with, I don't know, you said there's different roles, different parents, but where did the comedy come out of? Like, were you just like standing there one day and it just like a VHS tape was laying around and you popped it in, or what was the introduction to comedy for you with all these kind of like controls in place?
That was my dad, my stepmom. I think they got like HBO pretty early on. So on one of those visitations, I think I just had access to it.
Okay.
I don't think they were stressed about it too much, and I found something like that. I don't know if that was on HBO at the time, but they had cable like real early on. Like I remember I saw MTV at their place real early on, and so Delirious and all that I found on some channel, and I loved it. And then as I grew up a little bit, then my mom got cable, and I was able to watch all that like that '80s stuff.
Yeah.
Where was everywhere on every like basic cable channel.
Absolutely,
so, I watched all that. And then as I got into my teens, Andrew Dice Clay would come from other kids in the neighborhood and stuff like that.
Okay.
And some kids just had access to like more adult stuff. My cousin was older than me, so he was already cursing and watching more adult stuff, so it would trickle down to me.
Okay. And now as a 10-year-old, what was it that was attractive about stand-up comedy to you? I mean, you're 10. You're learning basic multiplication at this point in school. So, like, where is it that I know you're only a kid and you like the being alone factor, but where is this kind of being the center of attention for an hour and having people laugh with you and that kind of thing? Do you know what was attractive at such an early age that that you were obsessed with comedy?
Honestly, I don't know. Go back. I don't know what it was. If it was stand-up, there was also a time like really early on in grade school. Oh man, it's that the teacher was like, I don't know if it's every week or whatever, would go, someone can bring a record, like a vinyl record, and play it.
Yeah.
So one kid gets to choose. I don't know. I went to this bargain basement, like I don't even know where the store is, and and I found like a Laurel and Hardy record.
Oh, wow.
I listened to it, and I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I brought it into school. It just bombed.
Yeah.
Everybody thought it sucked. And I remember very early on, like, it's funny.
Yeah.
What's your problem? I was very angry. I'm like, you got to understand why it's funny.
Yeah.
Maybe one other kid agreed with me. So early on, it was like, I don't know why. I just like funny stuff.
Okay.
And, I got frustrated very early on with people who didn't get it. It's a lifelong fight.
No, that's awesome. Well, okay, and then you mentioned one time that you mentioned as like an offhand comment that you screwed up in high school. So this seems to be somewhat common with like comics, with just like this like tug of war with education and that kind of thing. Like, what was it about school? Because you are a smart guy. I think anyone that talks to you would agree that you're very intellectual and you're very deep, and I'm sure you're a great conversationalist when you want to have a conversation and that doesn't annoy you. But like but what was it about high school that you just didn't gel with you?
I think part of it was, from grade school up, I did well in school. I guess maybe a lot of us do, where it's easy. It just came easy through elementary school and then through even middle school. Through 7th grade, maybe 8th. And I think it goes hand in hand with, like, it seems tied in with, like, puberty. As soon as puberty started to click, my attitude went south. And my grades, I became antisocial. And then also that's sort of the time where classes started to get harder. So I was in, like, some academically gifted class starting in 6th grade. 7th, I was ahead. 7th seemed to be no problem. Then 8th, I was in advanced English, and they got you in like algebra, and they got you like a year ahead of everyone. And then my attitude went south, and then the whole thing of you're going to have to study and apply yourself to get this, and I never had to. And those just two things blew it apart. That I was just had a really shitty attitude, just want to be locked in my room. Sort of typical teenager stuff, but maybe to an extreme. And then my mom was working, single working mother, so it was a lot. Couldn't really force me to get to school. They dropped out, got me back in 10th grade, dropped out again.
Okay.
And finished at a community college.
Okay.
But no, I didn't get a GED. I got a diploma.
Yeah.
Because that was a compromise with my mother. It's like, you're going to finish. Get a diploma.
Okay.
I don't know what it was. It just like clockwork. I'm telling you, it was just like, I look back. I try to explain to my mom now because I still apologize for those times. What the hell I put her through.
Yeah.
Because she really is the best, and she tried everything.
Yeah.
And instantly turned off by, also kids change. Then the whole cliques break out in 8th and 9th grade going into high school.
Yeah.
And it really angered me. And I'm like, the guy that I used to like, these kids, I'm like, I hate them.
Yeah.
Whether it be a nerd or a jock or whatever group you break into, I just like, everybody's changed and I hate them. I don't want to be around anyone.
Yeah.
I just want to be alone. And it was just, and it was almost felt like it was overnight. And maybe that's my hormones going a little crazy. I don't know. But sometimes I feel like, because I was a pretty happy kid up until that point, and I don't feel like my attitude's recovered yet from that.
Well, if I mean, I might be marrying points together that shouldn't be married, but I'm seeing it's like you were in these gifted programs in 7th and 8th grade. So you would, you're around 13, 14. That's right about the time that you tell your dad that you don't want anything to do with him now. So it's like as soon as you break away from your father, then things at school seem to start going down south. Like now you're like, do you think that you almost like matured too quickly? That you became like, you almost aged 20 years and you were almost like, I don't have anything in common with these like immature kind of like kids kind of thing? Like, did you just get too old for now that you're kind of like the man of the house? Your mom's working all the time. You're probably taking care of shit at home that needs to be taken care of, like chores and shit like that. And, your grandmother's helping you out, but I'm sure you're also helping her out because of her advanced age. And it's like, did you think that was like the stress of being, a 40-year-old trapped in a 15-year-old's body, maybe, and like you had nothing in common with the rest of the kids who had 2 parents and they could fuck around and drink, at bonfires on the beach, and you're just like, hey, I got shit I got to do when I get home kind of thing?
I don't know if I felt like that, like I had to take care of, because I still look a kid. I was aware of that. I was taken care of, and I didn't feel like I was still a kid. And I didn't think about other people's family life. I never even thought about like, oh, he's got his dad and both parents at home. I never thought about it like that, or thought about other people like that. everyone's attitude shifted, including mine, and I don't know what it was. The anger sort of came up, and you're right. Maybe tied into the same time I stopped seeing my dad, puberty, great suffer. I'm sure all of that was all tied into.
Were you angry that
I don't really know why.
that your set of circumstances were so much different than everybody else's? I mean, how many kids in your school were going through similar experiences that you were going through at that age? Maybe one that you may not even know of, or something like that. Maybe was that maybe it? That like you were dealing with real life shit, and these other guys were like dealing with other normal 14-year-old bullshit kind of things, like homecoming dance and stuff like that. Is that maybe it? That you had nothing in common with these other guys?
Maybe, but I feel like it's like my generation, or I don't know how old you are, our generation.
Yeah, I'm 35. I'm 35. We're in the same generation Y or whatever.
But getting divorced left and right. I mean, a lot of our parents were divorced, so I never always want to be like, oh, my parents got divorced early and blame anything on that.
Yeah, but they might still have connections with those two parents, where you pretty much assumed your father. Would you say that you assumed your father's role in the house with your mom? I mean, not being weird to the side, but like, did you feel like you carried a lot more responsibility as soon as your father was no longer in the picture with your mom?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
No. I still feel like a kid, and they really took care of me. My mom tried to carry the load for the whole house, as well as my aunt, my grandmother helping her too. So no, I didn't feel that. No,
okay.
I didn't feel like I had to. Okay. I wasn't capable of that because I was incredibly immature, and then stayed that way for a long time. And I don't know. It was a brat. There was a lot of anger. And I didn't know where it came from, and it was all of a sudden where it was like 7th grade. There's challenges, whatever. This is hard, and in 8th grade, it just really hit the fan.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, to
this day,
was it the school was no longer challenging for you? I mean, you said you were in advanced classes in 8th grade or whatever. Was it the fact that like this was a total waste of your time? You could have done this. You could have done what takes 8 hours in a day in an hour and leave. Was it the school's fault for not trying to do more for you to keep you interested and stuff? I know your attitude was like even kids with maybe attitude issues or whatever. I mean issues, but different attitudes or different circumstances. Like they can still find like that kind of like that Hillary Swank kind of teacher who will kind of like bring them into their world and mentor them. Like was it just that no one was doing that for you at the school?
I felt what I feel. I look back in the work. Learning geometry or whatever, I hated it. I didn't want to, but I could, someone could have sat me down and taught me and it would have clicked. It was more, and that was hard, and I didn't want to do the work, and I'm a lazy kid and this and that, or I'm being a brat, but most of it, the thought looking back on what I dreaded was someone going, you're going somewhere for 8 hours a day. You're going to a building 8 hours a day with strangers you don't want to be around. Yeah. And it makes me claustrophobic to this day.
Oh, wow.
Like,
okay.
Put me in school for 6 or 8 hours. If you told me tomorrow morning I had to go to school, I hate the idea of being in a building. It's a prison. It started to feel that way. Where I dreaded as a kid before that, I just got through it. And somewhere around 8th grade, I'm like, no, I can't take it. I dread every minute of this experience. I remember I remember these vivid memories of like summer break. And then, school's coming back up. When are you going to start again? I'd count the days. And then once school started up, I would count the hours, sometimes the minutes before, leaving school till I had to go back the next morning.
Okay. I
would count it and dread it.
Yeah.
Dread it. And I don't remember any kids doing that. Kids just got on with it.
Yeah.
Like, not that big of a deal. I'm like, you don't hate it as much as I hate this? Going to this building with these kids, sitting in these desks. I just, the whole experience. So more than the work. Yeah. I hated the work. It was more like.
You hated the lifestyle of being a student.
It's just like, here's the work. You're going to have to do it. I probably, if someone had been disciplined with me, but.
Just a quick plug and we'll get right back to the show. Have you checked out my website, markstod.com? It gives you a whole wealth of information to how to see me live at shows. You can catch past Get to the Joke episodes and bonus content. And you can also check out some stand-up videos for myself. Please check out my website. Again, that's markstod.com, markstaud.com. Come see me live. Also, please, once again, subscribe to this channel, like our videos, leave a comment. I'll get back to you. Now let's get back to the joke. So what did you do with your time then? If you dropped out of school, what was it that you would do during the day then at that point?
I've always had these... still to this day probably is like obsession. So whether it be skateboarding or I started playing guitar, started playing bass, stuff like that. There was all these obsessions, things like that I would just become fixated on, and I would go into that for a year or two. So there was like around the dropout time was skateboarding. I was crazy about that, and guitar was right around the time I was dropping out. Then after I dropped out, it was all skateboarding till I was about 17, and then snapped out of. I think from the time 13, 14, whenever I hit it, till 17, 18, I went in this shell, and somewhere around 18, I'm like, all right, I got to participate in society again. And it sort of leveled off, and I started, like, what am I going to do?
Now,
in an adult.
What was your OCD kicking in at this point during these years, like prior to 18? I mean, I know you probably weren't officially diagnosed maybe at that point, but were you, if you look back, you're like, yeah, I had OCD kind of during those years.
Yeah. Because of all that stuff, not just the obsessions of like a hobby, what would be a hobby for someone? I still to this day hate the idea of a hobby.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love something, and then you go off the deep end with it.
Yeah.
You stuck it. You go crazy with it. So I remember playing guitar. My older cousin had played guitar. He was pretty good. And he taught me something. I think it was like the Top Gun song from Top Gun.
Yeah, that's what you mean. The for the girl. Yeah. I can't think of it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
This like the major like riff of this song, but it was like more complicated stuff that I was not ready to do.
Yeah.
But I remember if there was something in a song, I would practice it. I remember sitting at my aunt's house for like 2 or 3 hours. I would go over and over to the point of being unhealthy, like you're beating something in the ground.
Yeah.
You're playing the same like riff over and over for 2 or 3 hours. You're not even getting better. You're making yourself worse somehow. And I did that with a lot of things as a teenager that I look back on now like, oh my God, yeah, I was just like caught. It reminds me of that scene in The Aviator with Howard Hughes where he gets caught saying something and he repeats it.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
It's like you're caught in this gear and you can't get out. You just like beat your, and it's this spiral.
Yeah.
Like you fucked it up. You got to do it again. You got to do it better. If you get it right the next time, you got to do it 3 times perfectly.
Yeah.
And all these numbers games I would do as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And it just made the living hell. But I did that with a lot of things: skateboarding, guitar.
Yeah.
Trying to be perfect and making it miserable, and eventually ruining these things that I love. Because, I mean, it became miserable. Dreadful to do. Like put too much pressure on it. So yeah, now looking back, I see that in every thing that I, guitar, bass, skateboarding, and it followed me into comedy. I think in a lot of ways, but
well,
comedy won't allow you to be a perfectionist.
True, very true, very true. It keeps you going. Well, for the very little I know about OCD, people seem to develop OCD because kind of everything around them is kind of chaotic, and then they can control these little pockets. Like it's an easy way to control. Like if you play a guitar riff 3 times, you can control. Like it's something that you can control. Do you think that if your dad never left, and that what have you with your school situation, if your life was a little more normalized, you think that you wouldn't have OCD? Was the OCD from this kind of like, my dad's not on the picture, my mom's working all the time, and there's like maybe a sense of guilt because now that you're dropped out of school and and it's like, was the OCD kind of your way of controlling all these other aspects of your life that you were not able to control because you're 16 years old?
I don't know. Maybe, honestly. I don't know if I've been able to get that deep with it. I think it would take a therapist with me, or maybe you like seeing from the outside in, because I don't know if it was. But it started pretty early on. Get like that, and then just locked away. Work. Something. I've always liked that. And then, maybe comedy's maybe functional because you have to do it in public. There is no perfect in comedy. And I hate that, but I've learned to live with it. Versus these other things, you can sort of, with a guitar, you can lock yourself away.
Yeah. Very true.
Try to search for perfect.
Yeah.
And make yourself crazy in the meantime. So, I don't know where it all came from. But also, I don't want to blame it on my family because I think both my dad and my mom have 2 different types of OCD.
Okay.
My dad definitely had a different type of OCD. But I've never, I hesitate to blame it on them. I'm going, why?
Well, there's no blame,
I can't help it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't do that with my alcoholism. I don't do it with my OCD. Like at some point it's me. But I think my mom's side of the family is definitely neurotic, has their own OCD, and then my dad did too. So
okay.
So I don't know where it comes from, honestly, but it's been there since the beginning. You know?
Okay. No, yeah. I mean, I'm just curious. I think these little things about comics' lives are fascinating. And since you mentioned it, I'll bring it in. You do become an addict with drinking and drugs and that kind of thing. How do you know how you became an addict? Was comedy the reason? Was it just like, because I know you said when you got sober, it was like just getting used to going on stage without drinking or going back to the hotel room and being sober, like just like these things that were so abnormal to you. Like, so was comedy the reason, just kind of like a way to get comfortable? And then all of a sudden, like slowly, it just keeps becoming more and more. Was it comedy, or was there other things that had you become, made you become an addict?
I think for a while, I drank late. My first drink was like at 19. First ever tasted alcohol, maybe. And besides, I think my dad let me have a sip when I was a really young kid. Which is something. But when I was like, I didn't drink a beer when I was like 19. I remember through the dropout years, when I was 15, 16, antisocial, I remember that we were still in high school. They were drinking. And I remember thinking they were losers, and I was sort of this, like, against it all. I didn't drink or do drugs. I wasn't trying to smoke weed. And then at 19, I had started to come back around again, and I got a girlfriend and a different group of friends that were good dudes, but they were drinking, so I tried it. And then, so at 19 to 21, I say there's like stages. 19, I dabbled, 19, 20. And you still couldn't buy it legally, so...
Yeah.
Whoever could get it, I drink with them. We get hammered a few times, but nothing crazy. At 21, I could buy it. That ramped it up a little more. At 22, I started comedy, and then I think the acts, yes, to get on stage, it helped me. I definitely had a few beers in me before I went up. Every time. When I started comedy, I went full on. That I started working at the club too. I started working the front desk and being this errand guy that would do anything in the club, and then lived and breathed everything. And also it was just the managers, the bartenders, the waitresses, everybody was older than me or drinking. And it was free. And once you do comedy on the road, it's free. So the access to it, you don't have to spend money, ramped it up even more and made it more severe. And then I just got carried away.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into kind of the reason you stopped. I mean, I think there's like 4 different podcasts that cover your 911 call, which is a crazy story. And I'm going to link this podcast to this or whatever. But it's the one thing that came up during these things was you were in jail and you said you wouldn't call your mom. And right at the beginning of this conversation, one of the first maybe 10 minutes of us talking, you said how much your mom has been like this kind of like this North Star for you in your life or whatever. So what about not this is when you needed somebody the most, just that maybe they could bail you out or say hey, why didn't you call your mom and say, hey, I need a favor kind of thing, or your dad even? I didn't want to resort. Yeah, I didn't want to break her heart. It was one of those things that's very protective over her, and still to this day. I mean, to this day, and this comes from drinking day stuff. My mom's phone number is not in my phone. Okay. I know it. I've got it memorized. Yeah. But I never put it in because I didn't want to hit, when I'm blackout drunk. Yeah. By mistake, or someone to find my phone when I lose. And so I always just wanted to keep her out of it. I didn't want her to know any part of how I was living. And so to this day, it's still not my phone. People see my number pop up, and they're like, who's calling? That's my mom. They're like, she's not in your phone. I'm like, no. And so I know her number. I always remember it, and I don't have it. And I also did that for the club owner of the club I started at. I didn't put his number in my phone for fear of prank calling at 4 a.m. losing all my work. Yeah. So it was I was trying to protect myself, but no, you're really protecting them. Yeah, no, you're protecting them from you, and that's in your head. In your head, you're protecting them from you. But you would think that, I don't know what your relationship with the club owner is, but your mom would love you no matter if you called her, shit in your pants hammered kind of thing. Like,
Right, yeah.
So I guess, did your mother know that you had a drinking problem up until the arrest?
Uh, just because I think, I would go over and see her, and I'm sure I looked rough and smelled like booze, and the day after sometimes, and I look rough for a guy in his late 20s at times, and I've always had bags under my eyes. So when I drank, there was no hiding it.
Yeah.
I looked. I looked like I was hurting, and so I think she had an idea, and then I found out after I sobered up, she called some of the guys that work for the comedy club, like some of the booker.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been there since the beginning of comedy with me, and they asked them how I was doing.
Yeah.
He's drinking too much. I didn't know those phone calls took place, but so there was some talk.
Okay.
But I thought maybe I thought she knew that I was probably drinking or I had too much the night before, but I don't know if she ever knew the full extent of how bad it got.
Okay. And
well, she probably knows more than I do. We never had that conversation because I'm still like, I don't want to tell her all the stupid things that I did, or how many times I could have died.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sweet in a way. Like, you're still protective of your mom. I don't know how old your mom is. I'm going to guess she's probably somewhere in the early 70s. But you're still protective of her. And I feel like I want to keep pushing this where you kind of assume your father's role. Like, you're protective of her. You kind of look at. I mean, do you feel like that? Do you feel like do you have a mother-son relationship, or do you have like a friend relationship with your mom?
It's a mother-son, but we've been tight. I mean, we've been there since day one, so it's sort of like she's the person I'm the tightest with in the world. Always be that way. So it was sort of through all those times. It was like, it's also the best friend sort of thing. And then, and early on, she maybe told me like things. I knew things about the divorce that I don't feel like she ever shaped my opinion, but I knew details that maybe you wouldn't tell a kid. I don't know, but I'm glad I found out. I sort of knew what was happening the whole time, and then. My aunt and grandmother is sort of the same way, where they would tell me, back for me. They were great to me. So,
have you been there for your mom?
I am protected.
Yeah, as I was saying, have you been there? Have you been in a situation where your mother was maybe wronged, or somebody was rude to her, or something like that, and you kind of jumped in? I don't know if that ever happened, but has there been that situation, like your mother became a tense situation with your mom and some other person, and you felt the need to step in and not let your mom fight that battle herself?
No, I mean, it's like the biggest thing. My stepdads have been third marriage now.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the second stepdad, he was great to me, and a totally different personality type than my dad and my stepdad now. So laid back. But I don't feel like they've ever done anything. I mean, it goes back that. All coming from my dad, who the asshole, and did some things that I still feel like, she still tells me things that I'm still, that's more upsetting. But as far as anything like a new occurrence, I don't remember anyone really doing it. As I was coming up after that relationship, that I felt the need, but I've just always been, I guess, overly protective in a way.
Well, that's good.
Closer to her than anyone else, and we went through it differently than just a mother-son, because there wasn't a dad there. Yeah. Day in, day out, moving around, and then, through all that craziness. So
what has been your mom's attitude towards your stand-up career? Like, when you first told her that I want to be a full-time comic, and to now, even the part where she was calling the owner of the club, asking about your drinking, what's kind of, has she been supportive the whole way through, or was there times where you're like, I'm going on comedy, and she's like, or when the club owner telling that you're drinking too much, and she's like, maybe you should stop? Has it been supportive 100% of the time, or has there been pockets where she's been, you can tell that she's worried about future endeavors for you?
Well, I think early on, probably at 22, when I started doing it, she's like, she was supportive, but I'm sure she assumed it was another thing like skateboard, guitar, just like he's going to go off the deep. I don't know if she thinks about it this way, but I would think she does, of he's probably going off the deep end with another thing that'll last a year. And then I stuck with that one. And then she was always really supportive. She came to shows after a year or so. I didn't let him come out. I didn't want him coming out early on. I wanted to get good at it. Yeah. Or be able to have a good set. Yeah. I thought. Yeah. Before I invited him out. So a few months in, they came out, and then she was really supportive. And then for the whole way, the only time she worries, in these last few years, as you go on and you're 20 years in, there's no retirement and stuff. So we
Yeah.
still have these talks. Like it's still, at 25, it's a little bit like, all right, you can change your course. Now at 45, I know she still worries that, like, it's still not a stable profession. And don't have there's no retirement. There's no, there's no pension.
Yeah.
There's none of this,
Yeah.
And so I know she still worries, but she doesn't bring it up much, honestly.
Okay.
And
That's awesome. That's cool, man. I'm tired of talking to comics and how and how supportive their parents are. I thought it'd be totally the other way around, but every comic's parents are super supportive. All right, so
you should have my mom on. I'm sure she would be like, maybe she'd prefer me to put something else. I don't know. Sure.
Well, I mean, there's that, but like, the fact that she doesn't put it on you, there's a respect in that. There's a respect that she has, and there's space, and she treats you like an adult. She's not. If she kept nagging you about whatever, then there was like, okay, there's this mother-son relationship that hasn't really moved past like the age of 15. But the fact that she like respects that you're, still a comic after, even during all this going on right now, I think that's admirable of her.
It's also the thing that too. My grandmother, who I was close with too, with all her doom and gloom talk about, every day she could come up with a new hardcore story that would just bum you out or whatever. If you do this, to be careful, you get in the car, you'll get killed. You go play football with those big kids, you might get killed. It's too hot outside, you're gonna have a heat stroke. That's how she talked.
Yeah.
But if I ever brought up like, I want to be something, whatever, when I grow up, she's like, you can do whatever you want. You can do that.
Yeah.
There was like these things of like, I was raised around cynical people, but they also encouraged me.
That's awesome.
And we're supportive along, at the same time. So it's it's interesting.
That is interesting. Now, are you the only artist in your family?
Yeah, everybody else pretty much had the same,
Okay.
normal jobs.
Okay. Cool, man.
Yeah.
So now I want to kind of get into the meat potatoes of this, which is how you write a joke. Almost if I'm there in the room with you while you create these jokes. And I'm very intrigued to hear how this works for you, because when I was looking at your clip, the one thing I forgot that you do is you talk for, like, you always talk. Like, you don't let the audience catch their breath. You are constantly, I don't know if you're constantly talking, like, even you'll get a big laugh. Someone might miss, like, a little quip or a little piece of wit or sarcasm that you're throwing out there. I would almost be interested to know how many words you speak in an hour-long set, because you're constantly, it's just only something that I feel is a combination of the innate talent that you have, and combined with the hard work / number of times you've done comedy. Like, I think there's this blending of where I would put you in this upper echelon of comics. I mean, yeah, you're one of my favorite comics, even including people like, like Bill Burr and those kind of guys, because of how different you are, and the fact that you have this style, which is like a machine gun, constantly talking. And it's not just wasted words. It's not just like filler or just you're trying to meander to a segue or figure out. Every word has a purpose. So it's extremely interesting. And so I kind of want to get into how these jokes kind of develop. And we can talk about some of the jokes that you have. Your jokes are very self-deprecating, but almost, if you're not quite sure, it comes off self-deprecating at first, but you're almost it's almost making fun. It's not making fun. It's pointing out these kind of people that you got annoyed with in high school. It's like, hey, yeah, you're making fun of the bags under your eyes, or you're making fun of your height, but you're only making fun of it because people have no social grace and have said things to you. So you're putting out society's kind of like oblivious nature to kind of stample on your feelings and not really give a shit about how what comes out of their mouth and how you interpret it. If it comes off I know I'm word vomiting here, but I'm just like a huge fan. So I'm like, it comes off like, hey, this is a self-deprecating joke, but what you're really pointing out is society's ignorance and how like people need to be better than they are, kind of thing. Kind of going back to the annoying people in high school and how they've kind of followed you throughout your life and now come up to you at the end of your gigs now. You can't seem to escape them. So when these conversations happen, when someone comes up to you and says something about the bags under your eyes and try to give you tips, kind of these backhanded compliments, how are you capturing these ideas? kind of like, you could talk about the physical mechanics of putting in a notebook, or just like it stays with you, or just kind of like how do you recognize what's a funny idea that could be good for stand-up?
I think a lot of times it's interesting. We said earlier, like about having so many words or putting all these things.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm always sort of like, I never thought about it early on as a formula. I just wrote the way that was right for me. But
Mm-hmm.
I think early from like I wrote so much. I was big on like setup, punch, and putting a ton of tags in, especially early on. I think that was to save it. When you don't know what you're doing early on, you don't know if the first punchline's going to work. So I wrote all these sort of tags to save it. If the first one doesn't work, the second one will, the third one or whatever, and just safeguard it. And I didn't even know I was doing that. So I always, like early on, was just had these big chunks and bits that it was almost like overwriting. I was like set up, punch, tag, as many tag I get, change the angle on it, same topic, set up, punch, tag, and then you got a 5-6 minute bit. And I don't do that as much anymore, but I still love tags. But like topics now, like the stuff about my bags under my eyes, there's the stuff like too, when you hear people saying stuff a lot, or people have mentioned it a couple times to me, people keep coming back. So I sort of get annoyed because the bags thing under my eyes came up a lot. And I'm very fascinated with people to this day, for not just the bags comment where people are like, you put some preparation H on your eyes. And they'd always laugh at themselves.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by people who like repeat jokes that have been told for 50 years and then still laugh at it. They didn't write it. And they laugh at themselves saying it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what you're impressed by. You didn't write it. And then you're laughing at something that was told 60 years ago. I don't understand. You think no one's heard this is incredible to me. Like these stock things that people say or whatever they do to slam you or make fun of you. I'm like, if it was original, but no one really is. I mean, other people are just happy doing things that have been said a million times, and it really makes my blood go. It drives you nuts to hear it from different people in your life and over again. So once that starts happening, then immediately I find a way to try to just break it down and track them. So
your jokes come from trends. If you notice that there is a trend of just something that is annoying, that that so many people you've witnessed do, or actions that people take, and they all seem to be same and they don't make sense, and you're not sure why they do it. It has to repeat itself a few times, and then you're like, okay. If there's 5 people that are doing this or saying this thing to me or whatever behavior they have, then this is relatable and I can make a joke out of this at my expense. But really, it's about how shitty of a person you actually are. Is that kind of where you go with kind of the origin seed of your jokes? Okay.
And it's curious too, if like I'm fascinated by people and like what makes them tick or why they don't. And maybe it's a comics brain now. I've like been in the comedy so long and like, we do this and like, so being funny, we got to come up with these things and they got to be different than what's been said before. Otherwise it's pointless and to make it funny. So when other people are just happy saying these trite things, it angers me. I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would even utter that or waste the time or what they get from it. Saying shit like that. So I don't know. I always come back to like stuff like that. I will always like probably have jokes just shitting on people, trying to end these things, trying to stop people. It's not going to stop people from doing it.
Yeah.
But it's always stuck in my head. It gets stuck in my head. It's just like, what are you doing? Why?
Yeah, I think the example you gave was if someone comes up to you and is always fascinated by your height and you're like, well, I'm just on, like, oh, you're shorter than me. Like, yeah, I was on a stage for the last hour. Like, yeah, of course I look taller. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it's
a million times they said that. Yeah.
But I think your ability to all this stuff is like every comic this probably happens to, but your ability to identify it is, I think, what separates you. It's like the cream rises to the crop kind of situation where the crop is all these other comics that are in these situations that are similar to you, but you're one of the few that can recognize these kind of like trite comments and why do people feel the need to address things with me or bring up certain subject matter with me? So it is interesting. Was this something like this kind of very I think you have a very, and even how vulnerable and open you have been with me, even though we don't really know each other too well, you have a very good sense of who you are, and even. You mentioned in a quote or comment, I'm gonna butcher here, trying to look for it real quick, but it's like that you're your jokes have to be personal and unique. Like you're not going to write a joke like Jerry Seinfeld writes a joke about a buffet. It's going to be something that you're going through or you witnessed firsthand or something that you've experienced a while ago that you need to address. So kind of like where does this like give me some of your, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but like give me some of your hacks or your tricks or tips that allows you to be as observational and honest with yourself as you are. I know that's asking you like to break apart yourself and decode your DNA, but if you can kind of like help a comic like myself be more real with themselves and be vulnerable on stage with some of your shortcomings and that kind of thing, what is it that you do around those subject matter?
I automatically like think, and this I don't know if this is good or bad that I do this. I probably make life harder on myself and work harder. That as soon as like if the world's talking about something, then I lose interest immediately. So when Trump's in office, I never really had that many Trump jokes because I'm like, people are putting out great Trump jokes or whatever. Whoever's president, they're going to have some great or whatever happened in the news today. I don't really like current event stuff because I feel like if it just I see it and I've written a couple things fall in my brain. I'm like, I feel like that's original, and I'll put it out there. But I don't like a lot of comics are really good at that. But I'm always like, well, everybody's writing on the same topic. It's like a writing assignment now. I start to lose interest. But I'm not going to have a joke about the Super Bowl and now the presidential election and this and that because I feel like the chances of being hacky or saying something that's already been said are pretty high. Okay. And I want that. But if I have a story, my grandmother, no one knew my grandmother, but no other comic knew my grandmother. These stories that she told. Right. So I feel like you're already starting in an original place. Yeah. It's harder to make funny. It's harder to make a story about your grandmother funny than about whoever's president or whatever happened in the news today. Now you got to set up how your grandmother was, and you got to explain it, paint this picture for people. But that's the stuff that I find interesting more than because I just want to be original first and then figure out make it funny. I mean, or both, and I just don't. Sometimes I'm not big on Twitter and stuff because I just I feel
it's current event-y.
I'm like, I want to fight with 10,000 comics. Yeah. This topic. Yeah. Try to be the most clever guy. Yeah. I want to find a topic that no comics are talking about and then make it funny to people at comedy clubs. And now I'm interested. So I start there, but that makes it really hard. And maybe I'm, once again, too stubborn for my own good because, I should maybe try my hand at writing things about current events, but I don't like it. Yeah. I want to make sure it's original and it's me. Yeah. And then I don't know when things just pop in, or what I'm, like you said, what I'm annoyed by. But I do keep it personal. When I think back a lot of times, usually I have something, if every year I'll have a joke about some member of my family, my grandmother, an experience. I go back and dig the old story there and try to make some sense of it and then put that on stage. And then the new jokes about whatever. But I don't know if I even know my own formula. Like, are you like, is your father ever on the table or things that are just like super, just super, the things that get in your head too much or whatever? Like your grandmother is a positive role model in your life kind of thing, but your father not so much. So like your grandmother's on the table, but your dad, is it almost like a respect thing? Like to be in my act, I almost need to like you or have an affection towards you, and I don't have that with my dad. That's why he won't make it into my act. No, I don't think so. I would do both. Like my grandma's in my act, and then he didn't ever make it into one line a little bit, and I'm sure I've made other comments along the way, but I haven't found something funny or what I want to say yet. But yeah, it's not off limits. Nothing's off limits. Good or bad, they both go in. If I think it's original and funny, I'll put it in. Yeah, I'm not trying to steer clear of anything like that. What about your mom? This protectiveness with your mom. Does she ever come into your act as like, hey, like she could be a butt of a joke or something zany that she does? Or do you still protect her in your act? Like, even if she said something that's totally insane or whatever, you'll never bring that up into a crowd full of people because that's not, you're always protecting her kind of thing. I would. I don't know if I have. But I feel like I would. Okay. I mean, I don't think I would ever trash her. I don't think she's done anything but she said something or we had a scenario. I think there was a thing I tried to do. It was a bit that never took off. My mom, I mean, like, I was very sort of religious, but not like crazy religious. So my mom just doesn't curse that much.
Yeah.
She, at traffic, in like really serious situations, she'll say shit or damn. I've heard her say fuck a couple times in life.
Yeah.
But there was a thing I tried to work on. I remember, and I did do it on stage for a while, and I never got worked out as a bit or had really punchlines. But she was just like, we were at the mall, and she was just like, do you see those girls in those school? She's like, every girl's wearing like short skirts now. And I'm like, you like that? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking. Girls in short skirts, I guess, Mom. It's already uncomfortable. She's like, you can almost see their twats. And I'm like, what? I knew my mom even knew the word twat. And then I was like, she's like, what am I supposed to say? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. She's like, twat. And I never knew she knew the word, and she just dropped that on us. So there was like a thing I was trying to work on her, That was just like 5 years ago she said that. And I don't even remember where I went from there, but I was like, so she's dropped these things. And so there's it'll go in, here or there. Not that they ever become tight jokes, but I'm definitely not ruling anything out.
Okay. Do you capture, talking about the mechanics of it, do you capture your ideas, like, do you have a moleskin in your pocket that you capture ideas? Do you do voice the notes, or do you do like Evernote or something like that to capture ideas? Or is your mind constantly, because it's so much of a repetitive thing, it's the same comment that's been brought up to you now 6 times, to just stay in your head and you don't need to write it down, or do you always write down potential jokes somewhere?
I used to carry like one of those moleskins everywhere, or a notebook everywhere, but even moleskins get torn up, or you lose them, or a page rips out, and they're a pain in the, if you're driving, it's hard. You got to pull it over and try to write on your steering wheel.
Yeah.
And so like now that iPhone, just put it in the notes. So do that. I can pull over. I can do it. You can do it anywhere. I'm on a plane. I don't have to try to find a pin. Bullet points. Or if I think of the actual line, I write it verbatim. And I have it in my notes, and then I always want to put it on paper. Like once I get somewhere, then like work it out, like pen on paper. So I have a notebook, and then like sort of like 2 different types of notebooks. Oh, here they are, and like so that.
Oh, nice.
One like sort of fancy one that seems like more ideas that are closer to being worked out. And then, like just a leaf pad is just for like really rough ideas.
Okay.
And then set list. And bullet points and stuff like that just go on my phone. And in index cards, I'll take index cards if I'm really having trouble remembering. Like for roast jokes, when I was doing those roast jokes, take index cards. And then, even when I did these shows a couple weeks ago, first ones in a year, I just put bullet points on index cards on the stool.
Okay.
So I can glance.
Yeah.
And that's it, just so I can see the topic, and then I can go from there. So that's the way I do it. It's sort of, and I'll do that too. I just take index cards on the way to a show. I also have them on my phone. And so I just look at it and just like try to go, look at the topic. Do you remember it? What is it you're going to do? So put it out there. And then that's basically it. It's a lot of it goes in the phone, though, like day to day.
It's very kind of interesting to me that. So let me ask you this: do you work out? I mean, your jokes are bullet pointed. Sometimes if you know the line, you write the line. But do you work a lot of new jokes out on stage then, versus preparing them ironclad before you go up there?
I try to have at least like what I think is the first punchline.
Okay.
Talk it out a little more. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I like to have something. And then try to talk about it or tag it to a bit that's already going. And then so I like, if I can tag, if it naturally goes after another bit, it's easy up, you can ride that wave into it. And then try the first punchline. If that works, then I'll try to get more out of it, until it fizzles. And then like, all right, let's move on. It's starting to, taper off. And I'll do it like that. But I always do that. And so I'll try it here or there and just like set up, punch, try to get a tag on the fly.
Okay.
So I've got set up and punch written down, and I'll try to get one more line, when you're on stage and your brain's really like clicking and the adrenaline's going. Try to get it there. That's better than sitting in your bedroom or a hotel room when you're half asleep trying to find that tag. So I like under the pressure, give yourself a few seconds to see if it comes out. And a lot of times it does. So a lot of tags are written on stage.
That's interesting. That's so fascinating to me, because it's comedy in your life is almost like this separate bubble, because here you are with OCD and you're constantly doing the same riff on your guitar until you get it perfect. But with comedy, you're like, I got a general idea. That's 50%. I'm going to do the other 50% on stage in front of an audience. I would almost have thought, and I even wrote down here, that you would have written everything word for word before they would read like a transcript prior to you trying it out on stage. But that's not the case, you're saying.
No, I'll take it with the wording. I mean, I think I probably used to think it used to be verbatim, and now I realize like my OCD, it's just like with comedy. My OCD with comedy used to be more than just like trying a new joke. Was once a joke was worked out and it was working, that it had to be so precise and I had to nail it every time, and I put too much pressure on myself. And now you realize like the blemishes and the mistakes are part of it too. You're a human being, jokes. So even though as an OCD sufferer, it sucks when you forget a line or flub a line. You're like, oh, but sometimes it makes it better.
Yeah.
They realize you're an authentic human being. It's better than you just reading this speech to them and being perfect with every word. Like, that's not what they're paying to see. It's some State of the Union address. So I realized that late in the game that, maybe a sloppier is better at times, because I don't want to just be but it's time, it doesn't have to be just perfectly polished, and you can sort it out. And people, when you're sort of searching for things, people like can see your brain work, and that's how people talk. That's how we communicate. How we're doing on this podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it'd be more of that on stage. So I've allowed myself in the recent years to just not just focus on the wording, but also work on just like the connection and being natural. Too. It's just as important as nailing this line. I mean, there are times where it needs to be verbatim. It will only work verbatim. And then there's other lines that you can sort of cheat or go, I don't feel like saying it that way tonight, and it'll still sort of work.
Okay.
But from bit to bit, line to line, I just figured out, like, the experiment, like, can't tinker with that one too much. Once it's done, it's done. And then these other things I can do a little more loose. So sort of case-by-case basis of, like, some bit tight, some loose. But, yeah, overall, I only do verbatim when I'm, like, really, like, it's there, but it's clunky. I'm putting too many words in, and once I remove it and it hits, I'm like, all right, write it down verbatim. That's the way that worked. Commit it to memory, and then do it that way from here on out. So.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, so I actually, there was a little bit in an interview you did there, a little bit of your routine. You mentioned kind of we have a little bit of routine from a few years ago, and see if it's still applicable and what's changed or whatever. You go, I need to be alone and zone out a few times a day to find something good, whether it be a brand new premise or a tagline. I glance at my notes before I leave my apartment, get in the car, take a nap, searching and jotting ideas in short bursts. Is that still how you write? Is it still 5 minutes? Like, is it almost like you just like completely in an isolated, like, echo chamber for X amount of time, and then like 5 minutes of hardcore writing, and then you leave and go do like some random task that's nothing to do with comedy? That's still your routine?
Yeah, I still like it. I mean, this whole thing of like, I think I'd be better served of like, I always think, oh, I should sit down and write for 2 or 3 hours and have every intention. And I've set the time aside, and then, 10, 15 minutes in, even if I got an idea and I'm really writing on it, I can almost feel when it ends. And then I still try to pull something out of it. But I feel like the good idea is over. Now I can will sort of technical things like, okay, go trim it up now, go edit it. But the idea and my excitement for it's sort of fizzled now. So let's put it down. Come back later tonight, tomorrow, and I'll have something else for it. I do it like that now. These short bursts is the way I do it. Cut it.
Do you record yourself every time you perform? Like, how do you? I mean, you're a headliner, so you're doing 45 to an hour, and you're doing them 3 to 4 times a week. Do you record yourself and listen to it, or are you just going, I'm hoping that if my brain won't fail me and will remember if I said a really good line that I made up on stage, I can, how are you getting those gems that are stage only and not written down prior?
I record every set, just, audio on the iPhone. And so every set, short set, headline sets, all of it. So on my iPhone, I don't know how long I've had my phone. It has every set I've done.
Okay.
And something happened, to the recording. But yeah, every set. And then I'll go through and listen. With headline sets, I don't really go back and listen. I got a feeling when you get off stage from like a headline set, I'm like, here's where the trouble was. I can remember it's like an imprint on your brain. You're like, yeah, that one joke, the third joke in, screwed that up or it didn't feel right. And then like 30 minutes in, that other bit, you just know it by topics. And so instead of listening to the whole set, I'll sometimes just fast forward to that. And go, did I screw it up? Was I talking too fast? Did I say something I didn't mean to say? Whatever. Did I slur? Did I, trip over a word? What was it? And then I'll go through and look at the bad points like that. And a lot of times it came from like recording myself because I'm so OCD that when I didn't record, I'd have these sets that I thought were the worst thing in the world. They were probably mediocre. Maybe I did bomb, but it would help me talk myself off the ledge of thinking I was the worst comic ever. Because when you don't have any record of it, no way to go back and listen to your mistakes, you just think you ate shit for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And really, you screwed up a joke, and you didn't let it go, and it made another joke, and you were distracted by your screw up, and it made the next few jokes bad. So I was able to go back and start listening to it and like calm down. You fucked up one joke.
Yeah.
Fix it, do it better tomorrow. And this stuff was good. So I'd look at the bad, look at the good, and overall you'd be like, all right, calm down. It's all right.
Yeah.
Fix that, and make it better for tomorrow. And it helped. And it really was a way of like just talking myself off the ledge, all this self-loathing we all have. And OCD. Just when you have no recording of it, your imagination goes crazy.
Yeah.
You just start tearing yourself apart. And like,
exactly.
It's rarely that extreme. And even when you do bomb, like really hardcore, like, this is how my voice changes. Like, no one's laughing. You can hear the discomfort or the nerves or, the anger, all that stuff is sort of studied of like how to calm myself down and when I'm at my funniest. Like sometimes I'm just not in the mood to do a show and like I'll listen to old recordings of like when I did well and I'm in the mood to do a good set. I sort of hear my cadence of like when I'm funny.
Yeah.
And then I get in the mood to do comedy.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you're fun. That's when you're excited to do it.
Exactly.
Now do that tonight. And it gets me in the mood to do it. So
yeah, let's talk about the fixing. You're like, hey, that needs fixed. Let's talk about your fix. What are you doing to fix it? So a joke, you tell a joke. It's a newer joke. Let's not do an older one because you're probably like bad audience or whatever. But a newer joke. How do you fix it? Like tell me your process of like it didn't go like you thought. Do you rewrite with like the opposite angle, or do you remove if it was like a conversation that you have with somebody? Do you make it then a conversation between two other people that you observed? Like, what are some of your different hacks and habits or whatever that you might do to fix a joke?
The big one is, like I said before, like what's the setup? Is it muddled? Is it funky, cluttered, too many words? That's usually a lot of the problem. And then I like obscure stuff too. I like which a lot of times won't work, that I'll try these references that are just too obscure or they're not used to hearing it that way. So it's more confusing than it is funny. It might be funny to me, but they're like, what? They don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So like obscure I'm being in like some punchlines. And that's what I do first, like the setup, and then make sure I just really, the punchlines are like tightened up. I mean, I don't know. People always say this like word economy thing. I truly don't know. I've never like read a joke writing handbook or anything. Probably I should. And I know comics that are master like technicians that just know how to like whittle down these jokes to the fewest words. But I will always like probably use too many words, and I want to, but I go to the extreme. So I originally like just a simple setup for me. But I also don't like saying things so plainly like it sounds like any generic human being up there saying it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'd rather say crestfallen than heartbroken or disappointed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a word like that.
Yeah.
I like using words like that occasionally, not to be fancy or like I'm so smart, but it's just like it sounds better to me.
Yeah.
But sometimes you run the risk of them being like, some people have never heard the word crestfallen, so like they pause to be like, sometimes you just got to say. I had a joke a long time ago where I used to say neurosurgeon, and it this is like 15 years ago. I used to like neurosurgeon, and I had to say brain surgeon to make the joke work. It still pisses me off. Well, because I want to say neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
But people have to pause to go, that's the brain guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just got to put it.
And that's kind of what I mentioned that I so admire about you are these words that you use. I mean, you just made examples like crestfallen. I mean, like this, you are like this artist that paints. When a stand-up tells jokes, and I'm listening to a stand-up comic tell jokes, and I'm laughing at them, it's mostly because I can relate to the situation they're in, or if they're making fun of themselves, I can, that's kind of. But with you, I can vividly picture the situation that you're putting yourself in. I mean, like I said, the fact that you used when you talked about exhibition of sex, and you're talking about like mule kick in the sheetrock. How the fuck did you get mule kick in the sheetrock? Like that, like tell me, like how do you get? I know you have this AP English, kind of way of thinking. You were this honor student English kid in eighth grade, but tell me, like, what do you do to, like, I mean, when you write it, are you writing the jokes on the first draft with these imagery words, or do you take, like, hey, this is too plain, like you said, how can I say this better? Is that a conscious effort to do it, or is it just natural for you to write that way?
I always think it's like, well, I think about it in the most basic way first, and then or if you're trying to explain something violent, people all know what you could start with, of like someone getting in a fist fight or this or that, slapped, hit, this thing, these very basic things. But then you always think of almost these cartoon versions of like, what would be the most insanely violent thing? If you're like mule kick into a sheetrock, or like hitting someone here with a boat oar was another part.
Yeah.
Or like Wahoo Chopped, which was an old wrestling move from 30 years ago. Yeah. That's all in there because I think of like, what's better than just the standard, whatever topic you're on, just the run-of-the-mill, right in the middle. What paints a picture of the most insanely, if it's violent, thing that would happen that's surprising? Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous to see if you saw it in real life. And it already makes me laugh because you can picture it. So it already is like, Jesus Christ, how far do you have to go to that point? And it's already, that's where I sort of go. So I just don't want to say it in a very basic way. So it starts there.
Yeah.
I know what I'm trying to.
I mean, it's genius. It's absolutely genius, and it's very, it's next level. It's next level writing, and I'm trying to figure out how, if I wanted to kind of not mirror what you do, but if I wanted to kind of make my jokes more intellectual sounding, what would you say I should start doing? Like, what are some of the things that you do to keep like this great way of vast vocabulary? I mean, what are some of the things that you do to make sure that your words are post high school kind of words kind of thing?
I always just find don't say it the standard way. Just don't say it any, whatever it is always try to find, I don't know, something a little more surprising. So I don't even really know my own formula for it, other than just saying, there's just a better way of saying it. If there's a fist fight, there's a better way of, I don't know. The standard way, unless that's the setup, you need to convey there's a fist fight or something like that to get to something else that's more interesting. Needs to be more extreme and sort of surprising and funny. So it's just something they never could have seen coming. Yeah. So I try to do that with words, like that bit you're talking about. Yeah. But it's Wahoo Chop, where someone gets hit in the ear with a boat oar. Yeah. Or mule kick them to drywall or sheetrock. By the way, I've had debates about that, like that line, which way if it goes, mule kick in the drywall, mule kick in a sheetrock. Oh. You know what I mean? It's like, so I just played those two. What's the best way to say it? And so, but I mean, I always like just some extreme version, but I don't I don't know if I have any process. I think my brain just naturally goes that way now. Like, what's the standard way to say it? Ridiculous. What makes the picture that makes me laugh? Yeah. Of like, what would I like to see? Because I think life is boring in a lot of ways, and we never see these things, the things we describe in jokes. So if it happened, it's fucking crazy. Yeah. So I always imagine that of like, how do we get there? Instead of someone just fist fighting. Yeah. Or whatever it goes.
Kind of going now to when the joke is done. Now, I say that loosely because another quote you said, I don't like to assign any blanket rule or lifespan to each story, but it comes down how I feel when I say it. If it seems forced, I drop it. If it flows, it can stick around for a while. But it seems like your it seems like your act will always be your act. No joke, like gets officially retired. But do you revisit old bits and see like if there's something you can more do with it, or is it more like it's done as far as writing is concerned, but as far as me telling it, it's not done?
Yeah, that's right. Like, I feel like
Okay.
some I'm just not been writing anymore on it, but I mean, if something falls into place on stage, yeah, of course.
Okay.
But there's like jokes that last and they're done, and then there's some that I shelf.
Mm-hmm.
I do them for a year and a half, and then I'm like, I can't take it. I just dread it every time I do it.
Yeah.
I shelf it for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then, it comes alive again.
Yeah.
Even when that happens, I think that means it's on its way out, though.
Yeah. Well, what's your theory around comics like Louis C.K. and Jim Gaffigan, who every year have a new hour? Do you feel that's they could probably, it's not their best, they could do more with it. It's not their best hour. Or do you like subscribing to that theory where you try to have a new hour every year?
I mean, I think it's two different, like, the way they live and the level they're at is different than any of us. So it's sort of like, I mean, if we were in their position, I would probably do it the same way. We want to do it the same way. But when you're like a touring road comic that can't bomb, otherwise you don't get booked again.
Yeah.
You can't ditch 45 minutes every year. You know what I mean? They can ditch it and disappear and write for months on end and work on it in the city and, 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, piece it together, take months off, get up and do guest sets, bomb. There's no consequences, but like that just fuck around. And so,
yeah,
I respect the way they do it, and I would love to do that. But yeah, I think you have to be famous to do it that way.
Okay.
I mean, now, if you're a road comic, you would have to have a 45-minute set that could kill every week. And so I think it's wrong to keep some set that you did 10 years ago. So over the course of I talked to my buddies, like, over the course of 2.5 years, I would have a new 45 minutes or an hour.
Okay.
Usually that was, I didn't even strive for that. I was just like, keep writing, remove the ones you hate or you're tired of saying, and put the 2 or 3 new ones in the regular rotation. And over the course of 2.5 years, you have a new 45.
Yeah. Do you, how often do you write every day? Do you have, I mean, I know you write in short bursts, but do you write every day?
No, it's on the to-do list to write every day, but I don't.
Okay. I mean, I understand like now is probably an exception to the rule because of how crazy things are right now. But I'm talking about normal times, 2017, 2018, 2019. You're on the road, but I know it's like demanding enough just to travel and then do shows. But when was it opportune for you to write? Was it weekly? Was it just like when you could? What did you force yourself? Like, hey, I'm going to go back. I'm going to spend, between 1 and 2 o'clock in my hotel writing, or kind of, did you have any way of doing it other than just spontaneous?
I would do it. I don't know if I had a set plan. I would always every day when I was doing shows, I would always look at the notes on my phone. So, walking to get coffee in New York, when I get up in the morning, when your brain's like still fresh on the way to get coffee, I would just sort of look at my notes, think, get coffee. Now you got caffeine. On the way back, see if anything's coming, sit down, look at them a little more. If something came or you thought of something on the way, jot it down, and then just keep it going throughout the day.
Okay.
And then, no matter what I'm doing, I just sort of like jot it down. And then when I really got some time, I sit there and work it out. And whether that's at 1 a.m. or after lunch, whatever, I would sort of do it.
Okay.
And so and then I think a lot of times I would write, if I was going out, even like New York, where I maybe didn't even have a spot, or meeting friends at a show. Sometimes on the train, I would always go, what if someone lets you go up tonight? What if you can go up? They ask you to go up or something. So on the train, I sort of start playing, like, if I were to go up tonight, what is the new joke I would put in?
Okay.
What's the set I would, even if I'm not going up. And so you sort of get that nerves, like pre-show nerves anyway, because you're on the way to a show. And I would play that with my head a lot of times. Okay. And so I sort of like, I'm on a train, I should be looking at my notes, trying to fix something, and get ready and be ready just in case. Yeah. So I do that a lot. Yeah. Because I think there's different levels to like writing in your apartment or your house at 2 p.m. and then writing when the nerves kick in.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah.
On the way to a show. Like these heightened senses, and you're like adrenaline starts going, and sometimes your brain's firing faster.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're like, shit, I'm going to be on stage in 30 minutes. I better have something.
Yeah.
Or I better come up with it. Sort of comes out that way. And then on stage is another level.
Yeah.
Of like awareness and like, okay, everything's firing now, so your brain's working different. So I try it all those different ways. So just half asleep, pre-show nerves,
yeah,
on stage, people staring at me. I think you should try it in all those, to write in all of those.
Okay,
and,
that's great. That's what I love. This is what I love to hear, stuff like that. Do your jokes then? So when they're kind of classified as done, or you know, like what you sent me with the Gotham clip, you know, those jokes have been worked out, you know, X amount of years. Do they always stay in that bullet point format, or do they become more formalized, like a transcript, once they get to that, you know, kind of like, check, this is the final version of this joke, or are they only really written down once in that bullet point, and that's how they always are?
Yeah, pretty much like that.
Okay.
Like a bullet point. That's it.
Okay.
The rest of it, I mean, no, they're not written out verbatim anywhere.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless someone would ask for it, but no, it's just like that joke's so wired or ingrained in my head now that it was just, that's bullet points. If I have a bit about, I have like a Range Rover bit that I've been doing forever. That thing, it's just Range Rover. And,
okay.
Then it's like second nature and all of that. And then, sometimes I still go back and try to rewrite a bit. I don't go way back. I don't go 10 years back and try to rewrite those bits, but a bit a year ago that was sort of okay, but I never got it. It was never great. I'll try to fix those.
Okay.
Recent bits, but never. I don't want to go digging through notebooks from 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I have no interest. I'm not the same person I was then. Those ideas, but occasionally there's a line here or there, or
yeah,
something I maybe never got on stage that I've been frustrated with, and then I finally get it out this year. I've been thinking about it for a year, but yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So what will validate you that all this sacrifice was worth it? I mean, you've been on Gotham TV. You're a nationally touring headliner. But is there something that has eluded you thus far that will be like all these years of shitty road gigs and, bed bug infested hotels and whatnot? My alcoholism, all this crap that you've gone through. Is there some goal that you have not yet achieved yet? Or if you have it, then that's great. But that would be like, all that was worth it. All that bullshit and all that crap was worth getting to this point. Is there something like that for you?
I don't know. It's not fortune and fame and stuff, but it is more money. I mean, it would be like better to make a substantial living from it, where you could have a little bit of breathing room and then just focus on the work instead of so much of like living hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And such a desperate sort of, and it like that, but overall, comedy is pretty like unstable. So there's been so much focus on just staying alive financially.
Okay.
In comedy that I would like to get to the point where you could really just completely focus on the work, and it's not, and have a little bit of stability. Would that validate the whole ride? I mean, you still would like to have some kind of body of work after you're done, whether that's a bunch of albums or you're able to get a special, something like that would feel good too. And following, and whether that's 40 people in every city or 1,000, people that paid specifically to see you, to create some kind of, they want to see you and not just whoever's up there that night, would validate a lot of this. That like, okay, you did carve out something that people want to see, instead of not, you're just the guy there this week. No, I think that's like what we all desire to get to. Yeah. Your best year in comedy, how much money did you make? There were a few years like that, probably like off no merchandise, 40 maybe.
Oh, nice.
40.
Okay.
Like straight road gigs. Just all road gigs, no merchandise, nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
Just gig, no other money, no.
Yeah. Huh.
But
okay.
I did that for a few years of just doing it the hard way. Still not enough,
Yeah.
But,
well, no, thanks for answering that. I have two things I really wanted to touch on that I didn't get a chance to touch on with you with. Do you have they're one's kind of general, the other one's kind of deep. It's up to you. If you want to get out of here, I totally understand. I want to be respectful of your time and everything, but
Let's do both.
All right, dude. Which one do you want first? Do you want to kind of like the career question, or you want the deep question first?
Got a career. Let's get the career
Career
thing
one.
out of the way.
All right. So you spent at one. I remember in an interview you spent 49 out of 52 weeks on the road. How did you start getting booked to do road gigs? I mean, I've been doing this for 7 years. Obviously, you're more. I mean, this is more hardcore for you. I'm in Pottstown. You are in New York City. You take it way seriouser than I do. But it's like, what is like? How did you start getting booked? Did you have an agent? Did you self do it? What is it that you did to start getting booked? To get booked every week of the year except for 3.
Well, it started at a different time, different era that I started, and I sort of by luck started Charlotte, North Carolina. Did seem like a good place to start, but it was in '98 because the guys that ran the club here also booked a ton of stuff all over the Southeast, and so they had a lot of road work. And so once I got a little bit of time, they were eager to push people out. They needed people. 2000, 2001, people were still give you a hotel as an MC in some gigs and money, pay out of town MCs, and definitely features. So I was able to get on the road pretty fast.
Okay.
And then through that, my local club booked a ton of stuff. Shitty one-nighters, good weeks, good weeks in Charlotte and Jacksonville. Then I'd get in a club in Atlanta. On my way to the gig in Florida, I'd do a guest spot in Atlanta, get in that club, and do that. On my way to something, I would do a guest spot in Ohio, get work there, and then a buddy would refer me to the club in Des Moines. And so, the first few years from '98 to started getting on the road, probably 2000, 2001, and by was featuring all over the place, and then started headlining in 05, 06. And so then it just went everywhere. So at that time, I think it was a different time then. And you could just get in a car and go feature week to feature week. They all put you up in either. The money was still garbage, but you could go week to week. If you had 4 or 5 weeks, you go make a couple grand, 2-3 grand.
Yeah.
And then go do a solid week. Do a week in Des Moines, a week in Wichita, a week in Kansas City.
Yeah.
A week wherever in Oklahoma City, then come back to the east. So it made sense that you drive your car way out to the middle of the country and do it. And lived in condos. So that's the way I did it. I don't think it can't be done that way now because they don't get features hotels and there's not that amount. The weeks were also longer. In 2002, 3, like there were a lot of Tuesday through Sunday clubs, or at least Wednesday through Sunday. All the Funny Bones were Wednesday through Sunday. Punchline Atlanta was Tuesday through Sunday with a 3-show Saturday.
Oh, wow.
All that's been a lot of Thursday, Friday, Saturday stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the weeks are shorter, the money's lower, and so you had out too many off days. But back in the day, you finished Des Moines, you had a day or two off before you started in Kansas City.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Now, if
you kept going, you get a ton of shows.
Yeah. Now, in the situations where you were getting booked by the you were in a guest spot at a club, maybe that wasn't booked by your club, but a buddy was like, "Hey, there's a whatever here tonight. Come and do a guest spot." Did you always make it a point to talk to the booker after? If obviously you killed. Did you make a point to talk to the booker like, "Hey, my name's Paul Hooper. Is there a way that I can, I feature for whatever, Zanies or the Looney Bin or Caroline's or whatever? Is there a way I can get in your club?" Or would you just hope that booker would come to you first?
I would usually, it was like beforehand. It was, my buddy referred me, you're in Memphis, then you can do this spot here. And he already talked me up. Like, saying, he does well in these other clubs before. And so if you have a good set, a lot of times in that day and age, you could get booked as soon as you got off stage. That happened more than once. Where they would, then they would just be like, come back to the office and give you a week, which I don't feel like, I don't know if that happens anymore. And, or it's like, hey, we're not booking a house, send your avails and stay in touch. And it's that whole game for a year.
Yeah.
And sometimes you chase it around a lot of times and then eventually get booked. But it was a lot of times, going in, they know why you're there.
Okay.
And you're traveling through and, and so get off stage. It's either, and give you a week, or if you have a mediocre set, you're like, I don't know.
Okay.
And stay on them. So it was that a lot in those first years. That's early 2000s. I did that. It worked out a lot.
Okay.
Just didn't have to do 5 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever they say, nail the time.
Yeah.
Kill or do good enough with whatever crowd's there. And then hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right, now for the deep question. All right, so this was I was supposed to sandwich this in before, but it didn't really get a chance to come up. But um, talking about the road and all these weeks that you did in there, you mentioned on several interviews about how this like damage, you had some, this damages your relationships. Um, so kind of you talked about like you would put there was a time once you got sober that you would put stand up was all you were almost dating stand up, and then your girlfriend at the time was almost like your side chick kind of thing, like you would see her when you had the time. um so knowing what you know now, would you have done any of that differently? Would you have still, if you could go back in time with everything you know now, would you repeat the same scenario, or did you feel like you missed out on kind of like being the married guy with kids or anything like that? What's kind of your thought around that now?
No, I don't feel like I missed out. I mean, I think it was the right time. The girlfriend, I think that was like, sorry, people are texting me. Hopefully it's not showing up with it.
We're almost done. This is the last thing. So
Up on the screen, is it?
no, I don't see anything. No.
Okay, good. Sorry.
That's all right.
We got to put it in airplane mode. No, I don't like when I look back. Do I regret?
Mm-hmm.
No, I shouldn't have been married to her at all.
Yeah. Okay.
And but that was also coming off like bride. It was my first girlfriend right after I'd sobered up, so I feel like I need to make up for lost time in comedy.
Yeah.
I didn't apply myself. Didn't do it as much as I could because I was drunk in part. But I feel like I didn't apply myself during my drinking years, so I had to make up for lost time. And so it was a bad time to get in a relationship. I shouldn't have done it. And she really, I had to go through because she was way down the list of things and priorities. And I was taking every gig I could.
Yeah.
So we moved in together, and I would, if there was a fallout, someone's like, can you be here? Take it.
Yeah.
I'm just telling her, like, unapologetically, like, I got to do this.
Yeah.
This is why I make a living.
Yeah.
I can't turn down things.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's terrible for a relationship. But no, in hindsight, I feel bad. Maybe we should have been together that time. But at the same time, no, I don't think I lost a soulmate in that way.
Yeah.
She married someone else.
Yeah.
And we weren't,
Yeah. Do you still see that as a possibility for you, that you at one day Paul Hooper will be married and have 2 kids and a dog and a fence and live in the suburbs of New York and still be a full-time comic? Is that something that you hope that will happen to you?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think of having, whether it be a girlfriend, a wife, or whatever, I could see that for long term in it, but I've never thought about kids. As I get older, maybe I'm a little bit softer where I'm like, maybe, having a kid would be all right, but I'm 45 and I'm like, I still feel like it's a risky thing, especially now, financially, coming out of a pandemic and, bank accounts been decimated. So it would be insane to do it now. And so now you got, the next few years, now I'm a 50-year-old man having a family, maybe.
Yeah.
I always had a joke back in the day that I'd say I would have a kid if I had $5 million after taxes per kid. I wanted $5 million in the bank. And I know it's a ridiculous thing to say, but I sort of feel like if I got myself to a place where I was financially stable and I was like in a relationship I was secure with, then I would consider it.
Okay.
Is it something I dream of? I need to have? I don't feel like, no, it's not something I yearn for. I'm like, I gotta, have that. I would like to meet, have someone spend some time with, but whether that's a wife or a girlfriend or whether that means a kid or not, I don't know. I've never dreamed of having kids.
Yeah.
But
But it's not a hard no either.
Point.
Yeah.
Right. Not anymore. It used to be a hard no in my 20s and 30s. Now I'm like softening, like maybe, but then when I be a 55-year-old guy, having a baby,
you say that, dude. I had a friend in high school, whose father, it was his father's second marriage, and he was 61 when he had this kid. He's actually still alive. He was like he's like the doctor that delivers babies, whatever that's called. And their relationship was so tight because the father realized that he had a kid late in life and that there was less time in front of him than behind him. So it he was a great dad. Like just he had 60 years of like career first. He got that out of the way. And then he had he didn't give a shit, at that point about like if he had to be at the hospital. I think he like went consulting, like he was a consultant for the hospital at that point, but then focused on being a dad pretty much and was still like able to do doctor things when he wanted to. But so yeah, no, I don't think it's I don't think age has anything really.
Sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And I never look back on this. Like, I've had serious relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like 4 that I count as serious relationships. I either, 4 years, 2 years, lived with a girl, like years, we loved each other.
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 of those over the course of my life. And so, but I don't think, I don't think look back and go, oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
That was the one, got away type of thing. Cause I'm like, no, not at that time.
Yeah.
As I get older, maybe, but I actually have a sort of a new joke. It was a year before the pandemic. I was doing before that about it. Of just like, do you want to meet someone to spend the rest of your life with? I'm like, if I die at 48, if I'm living to 80, no, not yet.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend 40 years with anyone.
Yeah.
20 years, 15, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's very real. It's a joke, but it's also how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, people get married at 25. Maybe you did. I don't know, but
yeah.
I can't fathom being married at 25 and staying with one person until I'm 75.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
There's too much else I needed to do.
Yeah.
Mistakes and all. Date other girls, drink, learn my lessons, and then now, like, I could see myself fall in love being someone for 20 years. Yes. Yeah. Because I don't have any desire to run the streets and like hook up with a ton of. I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah. No, it's actually a really kind of cool story. It's like if I'm looking at like the story of Paul Hooper, it's like this kid who grew up in an environment where like he didn't, you had the whole situation with your dad. Your mother is like this, your mother and your grandmother helped raise you, but there's like this mutual respect where you guys are almost treating each other like adults. You kind of drop out of school and you just try certain things. Like as a kid, you kind of had a head start in life as far as like, I'm going to eliminate the stuff that I'm going to go down these different avenues. You had your mother and grandmother and Ann gave you the freedom to be yourself and explore skateboarding and explore whatever, guitar and stuff like that. And you ruled out these things. And eventually it came to stand up, and it kind of worked kind of with your mindset. It was like, here's this kid, Paul, who doesn't relate to the kids at school because he's seeing the world much differently. And maybe that's the environment, maybe that's his home life, or maybe that's just what he's, seeing on TV or reading in books or what have you. You're obviously a smart guy, and it only made sense for you to become a stand-up comic. It gives you the freedom to be your own boss. You have control over what you say. You never appreciated kind of that structured life. It allows you to work outside that structure and be successful. And you've catapulted that into a career from age 22 to 45 right now and beyond, whenever the pandemic ends. And you've kind of like figured it out, like in your weird Paul Hooper kind of way. You figured out your own life. And like now it's like, I can see where your head's at now. It's like, I wrote out all these things I've whittled down all these other things to get to this point where like, now I can have kids. I can be like that guy that can be like that support system or whatever. I really like that kind of story that you have. So
that's great, man. I never thought of it that way. Your life could have veered another direction had I gone that way.
Yeah.
I mean, easily. And so how it's gone this way. But anyway, something you said and that made me think like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even touch on it.
I know, dude. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, man. You are just a great comic, a fascinating person. I feel like we only just scratched surface level as far as like what makes Paul Hooper. And I hope to see you again, man. Hope to see you on stage. Whenever you're back in New York, we'll get you down, to our little small rooms or whatever. But if you want to.
I'd love to.
But
that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, that's my interview with Paul. Did you like it? I loved it. I love any time I get to talk to Paul. I wish I could talk to him all the time. Fortunately, he's in New York City and I'm here. I hope you had an incredible experience hearing Paul's story. I think it's amazing. Please go ahead and listen to his album, Tense and Uncomfortable, and check him out at a comedy club near you. Please subscribe to this channel, like these videos, leave a comment. It helps me out, and I'll see you next time. Take care.